Today we have a new reacts. I might have spoiled the whole plot of Natlan. A good theory towards Natlan as we, have a half a year to go till we're even there. Let's see what it's all about. Check out the original creator down below and subscribe and come to Twitch and let's watch it. Let's list out really quickly before we begin what we know about Natlan. Fire, Murata, could be Himiko, Capitano, War. Dragons is good too. Yes, there's dragons in this war, and there's going to be lava and probably hot characters. Here we go.
As you may already know, a couple of my recent videos have been Genshin Impact related. Specifically, I tried to make a few original character designs for each of the game's elements. I'll try and put
Wait, what was the thumbnails for those? Wait a minute. These are kind of good. I like that character especially because he looked like he got that dog in him.
Specifically, I tried to make a few original character designs for each of the game's elements. I'll try and put a link on screen for those videos, by the way, if you do want to check them out, because—
Wait, those are such cool, unique ones, especially the snowman. It's giving, like, sick Elsa, a dog. I like this one, too. Wow, that's nice. Nice, that's very clean.
I really am quite proud of them.
The Hydra one's pretty
That's
cool.
not the point. The point is, I am nothing if not thorough, or at least I try to be when it comes to making characters. So, in order to make those fan-made Genshin characters look authentic, I did a fair bit of research into Genshin's elements and characters and nations, just a whole lot of
Does he naturally play himself?
To make a long story short, I have been just unable to stop thinking about one particular finding that I found as part of that research.
Finding that I found?
I'm really no expert in game theorizing or anything like that whatsoever, so really I've kind of just been full-on Shane Medeing it out here, connecting dots on a corkboard full of Genshin
You didn't
trivia,
connect
but
shit.
in doing so, I think, tentatively, that I may have accidentally predicted the upcoming plot of the game. To put that more specifically, I think I know who the next Archon is going to be, or at least what their deal is, and in
Himiko is what my prediction is so far. Himiko from Star Rail, Honkai Impact 3rd. I think she's going to die in Star Rail and come back and Genshin Impact.
In turn, what the main story is going to revolve
I wonder if he'll say the same thing.
Arrive in the game's next chapter in the as yet unexplored nation of Natlan.
We're still 6 months away from this.
Which is a bold claim, I know. Not least of all because we barely know anything about Natlan at the moment, and there have only really been a couple of mentions of Pyro Archon at all throughout the entirety of Genshin's story so far. But even though realistically I don't think we're even going to be able to go to Natlan and meet the next Archon and play through that upcoming part of the story until probably like late next year, you never know
September.
when or how new lore is going to get dropped
more
in this
than
game.
6 months.
So I wanted to make this video now and kind of place my bets while this prediction of what could be coming up next is fresh in my mind, because I do genuinely believe that I may have, at least to some degree, cracked some kind of code here and stumbled onto what could be a pretty solid theory. A theory which, by the way,
you said Apollo, the gift of prophecy,
kind of here and stumbled onto what could be a pretty solid theory. A theory which, by the way, I've genuinely not seen discussed or mentioned before anywhere. Not even by, like, full-time Genshin theorists who actually know what they're talking about.
Like Ashikai?
Which is maybe an indicator that I'm completely off the mark.
Okay, well, she's definitely mentioned that before,
It could also be an indicator that I've stumbled onto a new discovery. Could go either way. Which is another big part of why I wanted to open up a little bit of a dialogue with you guys here, to just be like, hey, is this anything?
Yeah, I like his voice too.
So yeah, potential spoiler warning ahead in several different capacities.
I'm already caught up.
Now presenting my predictions for the next nation in Genshin, and also the Pyro Archon, and probably a couple of other things as well. We're gonna find out. Let's go.
Good titling.
Alright, so I'm going to be moving forward here based on the assumption that you lovely folks watching at home do have at least a baseline, like, surface level of familiarity with Genshin and the events that take place in it. But you are, of course, welcome to stick around even if you've never played Genshin before in your life. It's just, fair warning, certain parts of this might make no sense whatsoever, and I am about 40% more likely to sound like an increasingly insane person the further I get into this. But if
it doesn't change the further you get in. The more you play, the more insane you sound, no matter what.
Video essay adjacent energy.
The more I know, the more insane I feel.
Morning, afternoon, or evening, then welcome, come along, walk with me. Now, like I say, this kind of game theorizing is honestly a fair bit beyond my usual wheelhouse, so I am still kind of trying to figure out the best way to unravel it all. Do you guys want subs? It make sense. But for now, I think it's probably best to start off with what we do already know about Natlan and the Pyro Archon. So, like I say, at the time of me making this, we really don't have a lot to go on in terms of canonical in-game information about either the nation of Natlan or its Archon, but I have managed to put together a rough outline based on the small amount of trivia that we do have available. First of all, the Pyro Archon is the god of Natlan, Archon and wields the power of Pyro. In the official Genshin Impact webcomic, Venti recalls that the Pyro Archon's name is Murata, and that she is known as both the Lady of Fire and the Lady of War. He also notes that warriors from every tribe used to perform rites of combat and celebrate victories in her name, so it's safe to assume that Murata was at least well known by the people of Natlan at that time. However, in that same conversation, another character informs us that the people of Natlan, or at least a small number of them who are known specifically as the Children of Murata, have in fact been wandering without any knowledge of their own Archon for so many generations that they don't even recognize Murata's name. Therefore, it's pretty reasonable to assume that something probably happened between the time period that Venti recalls and the time period portrayed in that webcomic.
Now, we talk a lot about the Archon coming up here, and it took me a while to realize that too, is that like the Archon Murata is definitely dead. It's not even probably, it's definitely dead because of this. Sometimes I think we're going to get Murata as the Archon. The more you think about it, it probably won't be a playable Himiko. It might just be like a dead Himiko, which would be hilarious because that means they killed her in this game before we even got there. So maybe we're resurrecting her as she becomes a playable Himiko Murata, but it's hilarious that she's already dead. What's further solidifies the theory that she has to be Murata because she's already dead.
Important to note
she
that the
keeps
events
dying.
Of that webcomic took place around 1,000 years before the events of the game's story as we're currently playing through it, and that nowadays Natlan is regarded far and wide as a nation that is very dangerous to enter because it is constantly at war, with New Valette even describing its current state as an endless ring of war in one of the game's most recent story quests. It's so fucking hype. Natlan is also regarded as the nation of dragons, but truth be told, that's not really an aspect that I'm going to be focusing on today because anything to do with the dragons in Genshin could honestly take up several videos worth of time all on its own. So that's the past and present at least partially accounted for. But what about the future? Well, as it happens, there is one quite large canonical hint about what's coming up that has been available to us ever since the game's release, namely the Travail promotional video from 2020.
We saw a little bit of the music
preview for the storyline of every chapter of Genshin in advance.
And Resurrection,
yeah, I guess so. Show us an example of what a character who hails from Natlan actually looks like.
Small
but based
little kid,
on the fact that none of the other characters shown in this video have ended up being the Archon of the chapter that they're there to preview, as well as the fact that Natlan's Children of Murata are specifically described in the webcomic as people blessed with red hair, likely because it's a trait that Murata may have too, it's safe to assume that the white-haired chibi in the Travail video is probably not the Pyro Archon. Besides ruling out one person that the Pyro Archon is less likely to be, there is one line of voiceover from the section about Natlan in that video that really stood out to me as a potential clue as to their story, namely where it says, "The rules of war are woven in the womb. The victors shall burn bright, while the losers must turn to ash." Like I say, this is the nation of war,
turned to ash?
We're going to be dealing with the god of war, so the fact that there's going to be some kind of warfare-related plot is kind of a given, right? And
she's going to come back too, though.
Definitely lends some credence to that. But there is another layer to it that I think is going to help to narrow down exactly what that war is going to be about. I'm going to put a pin in that for now, though. We're going to come back to it, don't worry.
Okay, I won't forget it.
In order to explain why that one quote stood out to me so much, I want to pivot from stuff that we may or may not know to be true about the Pyro Archon to things that we know to be true about Archons in general. In particular, the relation that each Archon has to the characters that utilize their respective element, because that connection could very well be the key to figuring out what's going to happen in Natlan.
So the characters who use
obviously the main factor for someone being granted an elementally infused vision derived from an Archon's power in the first place is that that person must simply have a strong desire or a passion for something that's powerful enough to reach the heavens, as it tends to be phrased within the game itself. But that's not the important part here. Rather, I want to focus in a bit more on the specifics. As part of my research for previous videos, I ended up looking into the potential reasons why a character might receive a vision of any given element in particular. Like, why does this person
I've never
have a
asked that. I've never asked this question.
One, for example. Where does the difference lie?
And all
what
this
is
time,
the common factor that marks any character as a candidate for any one element over another? Many people tend to theorize quite reasonably because there's plenty of evidence for this in the game, as far as I'm aware, that it all revolves around the dreams and abilities that led to a character earning their vision in the first place. Like if they have academic aspirations, they'll get a dendro vision, for instance. But while I don't think that's completely wrong by any measure,
why is Lisa a lecturer
that
then?
angle doesn't always add up. Not least of all because of characters like Lisa, Sucrose, or Farazan.
I'm 10 steps ahead.
With immense dedication to their academic pursuits, but none of whom possess a dendro vision, like you'd expect them to based on that line of thinking. Some other folks prefer to interpret that a character will earn their vision because they stand for the same things as the Archon of that element, like how the Animo Archon is known as the god of freedom, and characters like Kazuha and Jean fight for the freedom of many people.
What if I just lied because I wanted an Animo vision? Would they know? If that is true, I know how it works. I'm just like, yeah, I just really like freedom and shit. I really want us all to be free. I hold up my hands, hoping to be an animo.
This is another take that doesn't always hold up, though, because, for instance, while the Geo Archon is the god that presides over contracts, the only characters in the game who have canonically been to law school, which you would think by that reasoning would make them the perfect candidates for a Geo vision, are instead wielders of Pyro and Electro.
Dude, can you imagine Kuki and Yonfe being Geo? Oh, it wouldn't work.
True. Now, before I go on, I do want to make it clear
I feel like they just picked the element based upon the vibes. It's the vibes don't line up for Kuki to be Geo, you know? It's the vibes.
I'm not trying to say that my own ideas of how visions might get divvied out is completely flawless, because I do not doubt that there are any number of holes that could be poked in my theories too, but I would still like to present my own take on the matter as an alternative way to interpret things, at least for the purposes of puzzling together a clearer picture of what might be going on with the Pyro Archon. With that in mind, I would personally argue that the reason that characters in Genshin are given the power of whatever specific element it is that they end up wielding, like the baseline criteria for them to qualify for wielding one element rather than any other, is because their individual backstory shares elements with the backstory of that element's Archon. They have been through similar things, to put it simply. Kind of like, even though I believe it's been made clear in the game that the Archons won't even necessarily know who it is that their power is being granted to when visions are given out, I think another way to phrase it would be that, like, if an Animo character ever met the Animo Archon and they really got to know each other, both the Archon and the Vision Wielder would be like, I can sympathize with this person to some degree because I've been in a similar situation myself. As an example, I think most people are aware by now of the joke about how almost every Animo character will have a dead friend or missing loved one.
Wait, they do! Wait, they all do.
And that is actually
I've never thought about it.
And not only is that actually very accurate, but also indeed reflective of the experiences of the Animo Archon himself, Venti. He personally lost a close friend and ended up taking on that friend's appearance, effectively living on in their stead. Likewise, every single Animo character will have some kind of backstory that mentions the loss or potential loss of a loved one, and they will more often than not either be trying to live up to...
This is a breakdown of each of them. Varka, Tomo, Wanderer's friend, Sucrose's friend. I don't remember that story. I don't remember Sayu Sensei. That might be a hangout related thing. Parmesan's family.
Their legacy, or will carry some kind of memento to remember them by. Another example is the fact that the Hydro Archon Farina is something of a local celebrity with a backstage secret, not dissimilar to Hannah Montana. Meanwhile, every Hydro character so far has been someone with both a reputation and either a penchant for revealing the truth, or a personal secret that they would prefer to keep out of the public eye.
Sees truth for Nilu, sees stress, sees the truth. Hiding a big secret. Something to do with truth? All in all, secret stress? So everybody who's hiding some ability, or just hiding something in general.
Public eye. The same goes for all of the other elements so far in some way or another. From the Geo Archon story being centered on his time as a leader, while every Geo character is themselves at the heart of a group or organization.
Even Ito is in a gang! Spina de Rasula, Opera House, Watatsumi Army. Oh my god.
To the Electro Archon story.
Wait, what's Noelle doing? She just works there though, right?
While every Geo character is themselves at the heart of a group or organization.
She just works there. But
to the Electro Archon story revolving around her sister, while every Electro character will either have a sister or have ties to a specific female character that they're devoted to.
Oh, that's crazy. Okay, so Clarence, Navia, Beto, Ningguang makes sense. Dory's sister? I don't know anything about Dory's sister. Shinobu's sister, I remember that in the Chasm's quest. Interesting.
Electro character
I don't remember Dory's sister
at all. Or have ties to a specific female character that they're devoted to. Not to mention that we already know that the god of cryo isn't exactly fond of her fellow gods.
Defies the gods.
Character is also at odds with either themselves or their predecessors.
Dead but alive. she had odds with being alive. Mad at her dad. I like that one.
In some way. I'm still a little bit unsure about Dendro because that one's hard to pin down, but I think it might have to do with having some kind of older and wiser female figure in their life. Even if I am completely wrong on that particular one,
Ethan's grandma? Really?
If all the other characters' backstories do indeed mirror the experience of their element's Archon, which they do, then it stands to reason that we might be able to reverse engineer a prediction of the Pyro Archon story by finding the common thread that runs across the backstories of all of Genshin's Pyro characters.
It's in books.
Good news is, I've already done that. And as it turns out, the Pyro Collective actually have some of the clearest, like, unanimous, across-the-board traits woven throughout all of them.
Dead family. Wait, that's just Diluc. Wait, okay, hold on. Let me think. What could it be? Before he says it, Pyro Anima have the strongest theme. What's the theme?
Their backstories out of any elemental group in
High
Genshin,
spirits?
so those common threads ended up being pretty easy to unravel, and honestly quite interesting to look into. I'm hereby pulling out the corkboard at this point because I really want to take a closer look at this because I find it fascinating, and show you guys
Bennett has a hawk, doesn't he, or bird?
Every single Pyro character in this game.
Maybe I'm making that up.
So the first interpretation that I had based on my research for previous videos was that the majority of Pyro characters were the heir to some kind of family business. Obviously Diluc is out here with the entire door moderator's name, and then you've got Zhongling with the one-man restaurant, the list goes on. All very entrepreneurial, right? But technically, characters like Pyro or Xingqiu could also be considered as the heir to a family business of some kind. And some of the Pyro characters themselves have completely diverted from their family's regular line of work. So
she a rock star and a cowboy.
So what is it that actually sets the Pyro contingent apart and groups them together? Well, let's take a look and see if we can find any patterns. Starting off with the primary Pyro character that we encounter in the game both chronologically and alphabetically, Amber is Mondstadt's last remaining outrider, a role that was previously held by her grandpa until he mysteriously went missing. Bennett is an adventurer,
a successor of some sort.
In the footsteps of his
that's what's going to be, a successor of some sort.
The way that he acquired his vision is a one-to-one recreation of...
The Pyro Archon is going to be a successor of an Archon.
How they first found him as a baby. Dihya is a mercenary like her father before her, and Diluc is a wine merchant who moonlights as a vigilante. Like
is the Pyro Archon just the parent of the future?
After the previous director, her grandfather, passed on and she performed his last rites. Linny is both a magician and a Fatui agent, who works on missions for his father, Arlecchino, the Fatui Harbinger.
So maybe it would be a direct familial relationship.
And ended up working as the
I don't really remember Bennett's past. I remember Bennett has just, like, his parents both died tragically or something, right? He's just alone now. Father, by the way, yeah, true.
Zhongling works with her dad in their family restaurant, Xinyan is a rock and roll superstar, Yanfei is a lawyer, and Yoimiya works with her dad as a firework maker.
Why did they just bypass those two? That had nothing to do with family.
Is the Kamisato clan's housekeeper instead. Zhongling
she works with her dad.
Restaurant. Xinyan is
she's a rock star.
A rock and roll superstar. Yanfei is a lawyer, and Yoimiya works with her dad as a firework maker. Now, evidently, the most prominent pattern to be found here is
parents.
Well, dads. Almost every single Pyro character has the same job as their father figure in some way or another. But only almost. The majority are following in the footsteps of their forefathers, but what about Xinyan? She may be a rock and roll superstar, but one of the few things that we do know about her family is that none of them are musicians. In fact, they even discouraged her from becoming one, which goes completely against that potential theme of abiding by your family heritage. Likewise, we don't really know what Tom's dad did for a job, only that he went missing. And Yanfei's father is an illuminated beast, and in all honesty, I don't know if they even really have jobs in the first place. However, we're not far off the mark.
Do they wear pants
their backstories in a bit more detail, I realized that there is another aspect to that.
What can we know about beasts?
Which actually does apply to every single one of these characters. Namely, that all of their respective father figures gave something. Effectively, my theory here is that the defining factor that qualifies a character to receive a Pyro vision specifically is that their backstory has to include an overarching theme of, appropriately enough considering the element in question, passing the torch from one generation to the next, whether by way of passing on a job, a physical item, a code of ethics, or all of the above. So let's take another look at things through that lens and see if it helps to bring everything a bit more full circle. First off, in Amber's backstory, when her grandpa is teaching her everything he knows about being an outrider, he says, maybe one day you will inherit this responsibility. Then, once he went missing, it notes that Amber wanted to show that she had inherited her grandpa's determination along with his former role. The elderly adventurer that originally found Bennett ended up passing away soon after, leaving him in the care of the adventurers who became his new dads. In this instance, Bennett himself would technically have been the thing that was inherited by the next generation after the elderly adventurer. That does make this a bit of an unusual case compared to the rest of these, but it still checks out with the
He's the inheritance.
In Dia's case, her mercenary name Flamemane is actually based on a story that her father told her when she was young, although I think she actually ended up getting that as her mercenary name via a separate interaction. In her character quest, however, after her father goes missing and subsequently passes away, leaving behind only a toy sword from Dia's childhood, she also steps up to finish off the group that he died trying to take down. Other than the keys to Mondstadt's wine industry, Diluc first inherited his father's wish for him to become a knight, and then after his father died, Diluc became a vigilante by making use of a delusion that his father once owned.
And he inherited Batman.
Other than the Wangshen funeral parlor itself, Hu Tao's philosophy of living in life and dying in death was also something left to her by her grandfather before he passed. In Linny's case, when he went to his father to ask for a delusion in order to help his sister, what he was given instead was a push in the right direction to snap him out of his self-destructive intentions and figure out a better plan. Toma's father may have been nowhere to be found when Toma went looking for him in Inazuma,
Best
but
dad,
prior to that, he instilled a devout sense of loyalty in Toma, which is what led to him working for the Kamisato clan, and if I remember correctly, even inheriting their historical family fighting techniques.
Loves that.
Meanwhile, Zhongling's father gave her his entire life's
loyalty
in the form of a notebook filled with cooking notes and recipes, which she continues to fill with her own ideas to this day. Despite Xinyan's family being unsupportive of her rock and roll dreams, her father was the one and only relative to do something to actually encourage her goals, by giving her some spring water that she had been trying to find due to her belief that it would improve her singing voice. Originally, I thought it may have been the case that Yanfei's father, being an illuminated beast, may have given her some kind of inherent appreciation of contracts, since the majority of illuminated beasts from her father's generation all signed contracts with the god of Geo. But as it turns out, her father actually did give her something far more tangible, the legal weighing scales that feature in both her splash art and backstory. Yoimiya's father, as I mentioned before, has retired as the head of Naganohara Fireworks, stepping down and leaving its management and future up to her. We'll have to wait and see if Chevreuse and any other future Pyro characters
these are brand new Pyro characters this patch
become available in future updates.
We'll see tomorrow.
As you can see, every single Pyro character that's currently available in the game has a backstory which hinges on a father figure passing something down to them. Or rather, I should say,
do I have to like go through Hangouts to figure this stuff out?
Pyro character in the game, if it wasn't for Klee. The keen among you may have already clocked that I have neglected to mention certain Spark Knight up until this point, and that is because at this point in time, we don't know anything about Klee's father. Her backstory only mentions that he's an adventurer who is currently off traveling with Klee's mother, Alice, who happens to be someone who plays a much more significant part in both Klee's backstory and the whole lore of Genshin in general. At the very least, if I'm being particularly wishful in my thinking, the jury may potentially still be out as to whether there's yet more information to be revealed about Klee's dad, which may contribute to my every Pyro character has to have had a significant inheritance from a father figure theory.
He gave her bombs. He gave her bombs. The first bomb she ever got, Dodoko was from dad calling it.
But for now, this
Alice did that. He gave her life because they made a baby.
The actual paternal interaction is kind of blowing my entire theory to smithereens. Or is it? Because not to sound unhinged, even though this definitely is what this is going to sound like, but another way to look at the fact that Klee is the one and only outlier here is simply as another clue to the potential truth of the matter. You see, Klee's mother, Alice, is known in the universe of Genshin to be a very powerful witch, operating as both a member of the Hexenzirkel and as a popular author of adventurous travel guides. Klee's backstory mentions that her mother is the one who gave her her beloved plush toy Dodoko, which Klee now brings along as a companion for all of her own explorations.
She gave her Dodoko. I didn't even remember where she got Dodoko. It's from her mom. Also, a question. Do you think Klee's dad is scared of Klee's mom? Imagine dating the leader of the Hexenzirkel like it's casual. Like she can't blow you up if she's so desired. I don't know how strong Klee's dad is, but this woman blew up the side of a mountain. She leveled the ground.
Explosive travels. And Klee's backstory also mentions verbatim that Klee wants to follow in her mother's footsteps and grow up to be just like her.
He's apparently just a guy, right? Okay, that's what I thought. He's just like a normal dude that is just dating or married to the Hexenzirkel leader.
All that to say, Klee's mum Alice, while being very much a mother figure rather than anything fatherly, still fulfills the role of being a parental predecessor who gives their descendants something important and inspirational.
Like life.
So clearly, while it remains the most common occurrence, inheriting something from a father figure specifically isn't necessarily the key factor in whether a character will align with Pyro or not after all. Instead, it would seem
I just really like this board that he's made here. I wonder how long it took to get all these images together, and like I like how it's all pinned together.
Align with Pyro or not after all.
Instead, well designed.
It would seem to be the case that this idea of passing the torch, which does feature in the lore of every single Pyro character so far, instead needs to involve the most high-ranking member of their family. Whoever is king or indeed queen of the castle, so to speak.
I see how you can make it
Even prior
work.
to this addendum about Klee's mum, though, the nature of Linny's father figure already goes to show that this whole intergenerational passing of the torch doesn't actually hinge on anybody's physical gender or their fatherhood.
Just the role.
Instead, it really just comes down to whoever is
So
wearing
Klee's
the proverbial
mom
pants in the family and holds
is
the
daddy.
most non-proverbial power or experience.
Thanks,
As much fun as I had puzzling all of that together, though, what does all of that actually mean when it comes to the potential identity of the Pyro Archon? And how in the hell has figuring out that very character-centric connection given me any indication of why Natlan might be at war?
Oh, wait, Chevreuse did get the patrol. She inherited the title for special patrol from her dad. We literally learned that in the last one too, so that is staying true to the theme. Her dad worked in the same industry before, and she's following that up.
Me to my actual predictions.
She inherited the role.
The fact that every single Pyro character
is true. We gotta see how Gaming is tomorrow.
A predecessor or parent effectively clearing the way for them to step into their power, either by passing the torch or figuratively stepping down from the throne in some way. I think that the war in Natlan is going to be a war of succession, with the role of Pyro Archon potentially being a seat of power that is constantly changing hands. There are a ton of directions that could take, and honestly, if even just one part of what I'm thinking here ends up being accurate, I'm gonna be so proud of myself. But let me go through a couple more bits and pieces that do contribute to that idea. I mentioned before that in the webcomics, the so-called Children of Murata had been wandering godless for many generations. We don't currently know how or why that ended up happening, but if this theory of mine holds true,
godless is a big part here.
The case that, seeing as how Natlan is a nation made up of many different tribes, when there is a fight for the position of Pyro Archon, the tribe that follows the losing contender is exiled, which again, if true, would also mean that Murata would have long since lost both her position as the Pyro Archon and potentially her life itself by the time of the events that take place in the Genshin
way
webcomic.
Before.
Additionally,
that was 1,000 years ago as well.
For one of the Pyro-related level-up materials in the game, Agnatus Agate, goes as follows: a pilgrimage for a wish, a battle to earn a name, burnt to cinders for a dream. Supposedly, this is actually narrated by the current Pyro Archon, which is interesting enough in itself, but the part that stands out to me here are the lines pilgrimage for a wish and battle to earn a name.
Battle to earn a name confirms for sure that you have to fight for the Pyro Archon title. That's an interesting concept, because so far we've always had dedicated Archons based upon who's earned the spot, who's been chose for it, but they're actively fighting for the spot.
Natlan is also surrounded by a lot of themes related.
Yo, what if we become the Pyro Archon? Couldn't we just be stronger? That'd be kind of lit if we left as the Archon, though.
Into phoenixes and rising from the ashes. So hearing pilgrimage for a wish makes me think that if, again, Murata did indeed go up in smoke over 1,000 years ago, another reason that the Muratan tribe may have begun wandering in the first place could have been with the goal of finding a way to wish Murata back into existence. Either way,
an ode to resurrection. That is so cool of an idea.
Like it leans into that idea of the title of Pyro Archon being something that can indeed be inherited or passed on to the next generation through combat. I am curious as to whether that may even pan out to be kind of a Dread Pirate Robert situation, like in the
I am not the Pyro Archon Murata, he said. My name is Ryan. I inherited the ship from previous Pyro Archon Murata.
Princess Bride, where potentially
I've never seen Princess Bride.
Has technically always been Murata, but only because whenever somebody new claims the throne, they take on that name along with it, in a never-ending line of different Archons,
different
Muratas. Another thing I mentioned earlier that I said I would come back to is that one line from the Travail video. The rules of war are woven in the womb. The victors shall burn bright, while the losers must turn to ash. I'm aware that this wording is specific to the English translation, but the
kind of a sick title
to do with the womb definitely harkens back to that whole parental theme.
It seems like to me that the coolest thing that could happen is that the #1 Murata, the first one, could be brought back to life, and we challenge Capitano for the title. And maybe it ends with the resurrected Murata taking it from Capitano, who's fought for the position of Pyro Archon, which is fucking insane to think about. And then we leave Natlan with the new Archon being the first Archon because of the resurrection. Also, Señora's going to be resurrected because she's hot and she's going to be playable. It's going to make a lot of money.
Of that,
that's unrelated though.
Losers burning bright or turning to ash.
That's the whole reason for that one.
That feels like it circles back.
Then
to
we
those
resurrect. She
previous
beats
points about people either claiming the power of Pyro or going up in smoke, and potentially being able to be resurrected from those ashes like a phoenix. It's probably worth noting that the title of this chapter, as mentioned in the Travail video,
I really thought he mentioned that right away.
Resurrection. Unfortunately,
that's a tie-in
I
at the
cannot for
end.
the life of me find where I originally heard this from, but I did also hear a rumor some time ago that there were actually going to be 2 Pyro Archons in the Natlan chapter. And that they would be
throws his hat in
siblings.
there.
You never know how accurate leaks and rumors are going to be, but if that one does hold any credence, I do think it would be really interesting to
probably
see 2
isn't going to be
characters
it right
who
away.
are perhaps the actual descendants
He'll
of
throw his
either
hat
the
into
current
war.
or previous Pyro Archon, duking it out to see who is the most deserving of inheriting their parents' throne.
That's true.
I am personally inclined to at least be hopeful that that might be a story element that will come into play, because based on some official artwork, one of the real-life geographical inspirations for Natlan seems to be Mexico, a region with Mayan heritage, and Mayan history seems to have a lot of mythology featuring twins and siblings. When it comes to
that's
what the
definitely
Pyro Archon that we do encounter is actually going to be like and their intentions, the only canon clue that we really have is one of Venti's voice lines, where he describes the Pyro Archon as a wayward warmongering wretch. However, this same voice line describes the Geo Archon as a brutish, blundering buffoon, which is something that we as players know not to be true because Zhongli is in fact quite wise, a fact that he will remind you of at length every time you put your controller down for a bit too long. All that to say, that wayward warmongering description of the Pyro Archon may be worth taking with a grain of salt, because it—
Yo, why is why is he saying misinformation? Here's a bigger theory outside of the video. Venti is doing something way bigger than any of us realize, and that's why he's never had an Archon Quest Part 2, and that's why he had his vision stolen from, his Gnosis stolen from him. Yeah, I don't trust Venti at all.
Could be about as accurate as that description of Zhongli.
He seems so cute and twinky and like trustworthy.
But to summarize, my bet is that some kind of parental passing of the torch to a new generation is going to be a key factor in the story of the Natlan
They love
chapter.
lore too. Mayan lore could be a really cool thing to incorporate.
Heavy weight in the story of the Pyro Archon themselves. I also think it's
Was Venti sober
that
even,
Natlan
like—
itself may have a centuries-long tradition of tribal warfare and ritual combat, specifically with the power and title of the Pyro Archon as the prize. Or if nothing else, that there will be some kind of arena in which the Pyro Archon must defend their title as the Pyro Archon, and the Gnosis that they draw their power from along with it. And if that does end up being the case, I can't help but wonder how the next Fatui Harbinger that we're going to meet may end up playing into all of that. As for the Pyro Archon himself, whoever they may be, I do not think that they are the first or even second to hold that position. But if they somehow are, then I think they will have had to fight to retain their title like a professional wrestler trying to keep their belt for hundreds of years. And finally, even—
Well, think about, especially too, having a Spanish theme. What's very popular is luchadors and fighting and like wrestling for a title. That's a really popular thing as well in that region of the world. That's where a lot of that originated even. So, I mean, this being based upon that kind of culture, that makes plenty of sense.
Though this is mostly wishful thinking on my part based on various rumors that I've heard around the place, it would be very interesting if we do indeed end up meeting the descendant of the Pyro Archon, whether in the form of an individual character who either already inherited the title from Vanessa or is aiming to inherit it, or alternatively in the form of multiple characters both vying for the throne in some way or other.
Comes out of
nowhere. Especially because, for reasons relating to Fontaine spoilers, it may even prove to be possible for them to both end up sharing the throne together as a team. I don't know when this video is going to come out exactly, but if you are seeing this after the 4.3 update, then please let me know in the comments if the new Pyro character does indeed stay on theme and have some kind of father figure in
You
their
were
backstory.
right.
And,
You were correct.
Hey, other than that, please do join in with the
Gaming might
theorizing
too,
here.
as well.
Hell, you can even feel free to float this by any actual full-time Genshin theorists if you'd like to. I just want to know, do you guys think that this theory actually holds any water? Or
Vanessa's been gone for a while.
Whatever element it might be.
Resurrection, though.
I don't really know if there are any other clues that I might have missed which add to the likelihood of any of this happening, or indeed if there's anything else that you guys might know which completely disproves everything that I've said today.
That part.
Because again, I am very aware that I could be a million miles off the mark, so for the most part, I'm just open to discussion on all of this.
This is a good video. I like this a lot.
When we do eventually get to visit Natlan, though, I hope you've had as much fun unraveling this fun little
that was a fun video, man. That was really good.
Puzzling it all together. Oh, and by the way, I know this was a bit of a different kind of format for me than usual, but rest assured, I will be returning to my regularly scheduled programming in the new year, so don't worry.
I like his voice.
On the flip side, if you guys do want to see more incredibly specific, hyper-focused video essays and stuff like this in the future, just let me know, because I certainly wouldn't be adverse to doing this again. But for now, in any case, thank you so much again for tuning in.
That was so good, man.
I hope you'll all keep on staying as
subscribe
safe, happy, and healthy as you possibly
and
can.
like
Also, happy holidays. I think this is coming out around
and comment.
holiday time.
This video was so
happy
good.
New Year.
Smile.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Dude, That was an amazing video talking about the breakdown of everything. But 2 things. Vanessa, yes, ascended to Celestia in the very end of the manga online, like the web manga. So we know that to be true. I don't imagine we're going to see Vanessa. If anything, this would be a really cool first time for Celestia to get directly involved with the hands of what's going on here in Natlan. Imagine there was some kind of tie-in, like at least an Easter egg to her, because she's such a big part of the initial lore that we learned, down to like what we have now. It'd be really cool to see her again. Secondly, what if, and this is a huge what if, Senora comes back to fight for the place herself too? What if she did? And that's how they work it in there. I know I'm coping. I keep mentioning this whole Senora thing. I brought it up a million times. But I'm saying if they brought her back to let her fight for a shot, because she's strong. Even though she got beat up by another Archon, she could have a chance. I don't know. I would love to see Senora come back around, but mainly the best idea lies between 2 siblings fighting for a throne, and the Capitano's like, bitches, I'm here. I want this Gnosis. And he doesn't want to be the Archon. You know, he doesn't want to be the Archon at all. He wants the Gnosis. So clearly, I think we did just get it technically spoiled. I think this is correct. Because he's got to get the Gnosis somehow. This is the only way to do it, if you have to fight for it. What an easy way to get a Gnosis too, like to have an open competition for anybody who thinks they can claim it. Great video. Let me know what you thought down below. Subscribe, come to the Twitch stream for more stuff like this live. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy. Subscribe to this guy, by the way, too. I'm going to link him down below.